we had a kid a year or so after we got married, and I was about 21, 22 years old. I didn't have a job, and a
Mhm.
friend of mine in Brockton, Massachusetts, said, "Hey, why don't you come roof for me?" I'm like, "I don't know anything about roofing," and his immediate response was, "That's perfect. We'll teach you." Um, so it was a second generational roofing company, a company called Moberg Roofing, and again, I can't. The gentleman name was Dick Moberg, and I can't begin to thank him enough to this day. Almost 30 years later, he took me under his wing. He taught me everything I needed to know about roofing and um, asphalt and cedar and slate, TPO, EPDM, commercial, residential. I mean, just everything. And the first lesson he ever gave me, Muhammad, was the first day I showed up on a Monday, and it was early in the morning, and we get to this house, and he says, you only need to know two things about roofing. I said, all right, what's
Mhm.
that? He goes, water flows downhill. Okay, that makes sense. Water flows downhill. And he goes, you flow
Yeah.
downhill. Don't fall off the roof. So we got to ripping the roof off, and then the foreman comes over. He goes, you see all that stuff on the ground? I said, uh-huh. He goes, put it in the dumpster. Okay. Couple hours later, he says, you see all that material over there? And I was, uh-huh. He goes, put it up on the roof. I said, okay. So I did that for a couple of years. And that was, it was, I really enjoyed it because you show up onto a job in the morning, and you had this old crappy beat up roof, and at the end of the day it'd be beautiful and pristine, and the yard would be picked up. And again, it was a nice feeling, a sense of accomplishment, on a daily basis, of seeing what you did, what you created, and what the progress you made on that roof. And that was incredibly gratifying. Throughout my career, I've held various jobs in retail, everything from selling sporting goods to suits to, J. Crew and, random retail places. Um, and again, another man who was very impactful in my life, a guy named Ron Lindstruth. He was out of West Hartford, and I was working for Joseph A. Banks, a suit store selling suits. And he said to me one day, he said, Tommy, he said, how many people have walked in the front door today? How many people have, walked in, and how many, I said, oh, probably, 50 people have walked in our front door. And he basically said, you shouldn't be in retail. You should be in outside sales, because if, you can see as many people in a day as you want in outside sales versus retail, where you're waiting for that person to come in the front door. And that kind of got my wheels turning, um, about basically life, my ability, um, and so it wasn't long after that I found a small startup tech company called C Projects, the letter C Projects. And Mohammed, I'm not gonna guess your age, but my gut tells me you're a little younger than me. So there was a time in life when we didn't have the internet.
Uh,
And this company
uh,
was a lead service for the commercial construction industry. They were the first company to put the blueprints and plans and specifications of commercial projects online and make them available for access, through a subscription service. And
mhm.
the problem, and that's commonplace today. I mean, like, everyone is putting their blueprints and specs online, but we were the first in the world to do it. The problem was
Mhm.
dial-up internet was pretty much the only internet available to the average consumer, and so we're trying to shovel these, massive files through dial-up, and it it we were just ahead of our time, and we couldn't quite figure out the adoption rate for high-speed internet quite wasn't there yet. And so again, it was a great idea. It was a great company. Again, it's commonplace today, but didn't quite work out. And I've had other careers selling software into the amusement industry. So for like arcades or amusement parks, Was again very, very fortunate. Was able to travel the world, um, to literally around the world selling software to these amusement parks and arcades and whatnot. And that was, again, that was an absolute epic journey for me. Been to some places, just amazing, amazing places, amazing people that I got to interact with, and still very good friends with many of those people today.